Hello, welcome to Parsons Communication Design Lecture Series for the spring 2023. My name is Lynn Kiang, Associate Director of the program. And as you know, CD Lecture Series is a place for CD students to meet design thinkers and practitioners within the discipline and in the adjacent fields. And this semester, we're spending time with the designers within our community. We had Elaine Lopez last time, and today we have Lynn Kiang. And then 2 weeks after, Pascal Glissman, and after that it's 908A, which is myself and Andrew Leclerc, and Synoptic Office, Casper Lam and Eugene Park, and lastly, Kelly Walters. The lecture takes place in every 2 weeks on Fridays, 3 p.m. Eastern throughout the semester. And you can find out more details about this lecture and the upcoming lectures and the past lectures from the CD app, and watch, the past lectures from our YouTube channel. So today, today's speaker is Lynn Kiang. She is a co-founder of Dome, a multidisciplinary design studio in experience design, graphic design, and built environments based in Brooklyn. She previously led teams in experience design at SYPartners, collaborating with strategists and company leaders in transforming their brand. She was a designer at local projects, overseeing graphic, interaction, and media design for museums and cultural institutions. As an educator, Lynn is the director of the MPSCD graduate program and assistant professor of communication design at Parsons. She has been a visiting critic and instructor at Maryland Institute College of Art, Rhode Island School of Design, and the School of Visual Arts. She received her MFA in graphic design from the Rhode Island School of Design and BS in psychology from the University of California at Los Angeles. Thank you again, Lynn, for presenting today, and the room is yours.
Thank you, Ron. Hi, everyone. So since, we are all kind of in the same Parsons community, since you know me probably as a former teacher, perhaps I've come across you in the hallway, I would love just to kind of keep this format a bit more conversational and a bit more informal with you all. Since, I just personally want to just hear from you and start that conversation. So I actually want to warm up with a question for all of you. To start off with asking you a question. So I'm curious if anyone has a meaning to their name. Does your name mean something? And that could be your English name. It could be perhaps if you're given a name from your country, or your parents gave you like a name based on a different language. I would love to know if anyone would be willing to share what their name means. And if you could come on camera to share that. Hi, Abigail.
Hi, I already wrote this in the chat as well, but my name is Abigail and it means Father's Joy.
How did you get that name? If you don't mind me asking, like, why did they fix that?
It's actually a little bit of a funny story, but my mother was originally going to be called Abigail, but when she was born, my grandmother said that she looked like a Rebecca, so I was named instead Abigail.
Amazing. Okay, yeah. That's nice. It's nice you got kind of this surname from your mother. It's cool.
Yeah.
Anyone else? What does your name mean? I'm going to call one of my students because I see you all. Shashanta, are you on?
Hey, my name, it means silence. So
silence.
in India, in Hindi language, Shant means silent. So yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, do you know why your parents gave you that name? Did they hope you were a quiet baby?
No, no, probably they named this before I was a quiet baby, and then I turned out to be a quiet person.
Okay, so you've lived up to such a name. Lovely. Yeah. All right, thanks for sharing. Yeah. And maybe one more person, if they're willing to volunteer, or I'm forced to call on my MPS students again.
I can go. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shivi, yeah.
So my name is actually Shivranjani, which a lot of people don't know. But the short name is Shivi because it's just easier to pronounce and like move around. But my name is actually the name of an Indian goddess, which just means someone who makes Lord Shiva happy. And I think the reason my father, because my mom really didn't want to name me that, she wanted to name me something small. But I think the reason he went for that was because he just always wanted me to be a force of nature. So yeah.
I love that. I love that there's this hope and expectation in these names that you're giving to yourself. Well, thank you for sharing. So this is gonna actually start our lecture. So let me just quickly share my screen. Actually, let me also share sound while I'm at it, so I don't forget that. So hi everyone. I'm Lynn Kiang. Some of you I've taught, some of you I've just met in class directing. Some of you I would love to meet you eventually, so please ping me and hit up an office hour if you ever are on campus. But I just wanted to kind of start off with this, it's just a conversation, right? That we all have a story. My name, Lynn Kiang, is actually from my Chinese name. My mother she studied Chinese literature and decided to make my name a Jiangling, which is Chinese, which is a symbol with a river. So Jiang is a river in China, and then Ling is a kind of a small boat. And so everyone's name kind of has a story, whether it's a backstory or the name itself has a mark and a meaning. And the name Lynn Kiang just is derived from that. But to me, that is part of my identity, and that is kind of my origin story, if you will. And a lot of the work that I do is based in storytelling. So I run a design studio called Dome. We consider ourselves an experience design studio, and I'll get into more of what that is, but it is a practice that's medium agnostic. So we don't actually specialize in any particular medium, whether it's print, digital, physical, spatial. We kind of design through all different types of mediums for all different types of scale. But that also means that we take on a lot of different capabilities. So we do everything from like research and strategy, or conducting interviews and facilitating workshops. And then we kind of do from soup to nuts, the graphic design, identity and visual design. We're in wireframes, we're designing actual production files that we hand off to fabricators. We do master plans, and then or even in After Effects, like cutting motion graphics and Premiere cutting videos. So, you know, we kind of do a full suite of things within the studio. And the studio is just 2 people. So this is Katie Lee, she's my other co-founder, and we both met at local projects. Back when I worked there, she was actually my boss, and you never knew who you'll meet when you're working. But we started our studio in 2014, really just tapping our interests and our past experience working in media design and graphic design. And it's important also that, you know, for us, we're both obviously minority, we're both women, and starting our own studio was in itself a design project. And we design for a bunch of different clients. I mean, for us, we do a lot of museums and cultural institutions, but, you know, have worked in the past with also kind of for-profit companies doing more social impact work. So like I started this conversation, we start with questions, right? I asked you all what your name means. And so today I really want to open up the conversation with a kind of a ask me anything format. So I want to not necessarily just lecture straight through for 30 minutes. I would love to have a conversation with you all. And so I have a few starter questions for you to take a look at. And each one might lead us to a different direction today in our conversation, but I'm going to open it up to the group, and feel free to either come on like audio, because I can't read the chat, or put it in chat. Which question do you want me to answer to start off the conversation? So throw it in chat. I think Rune can see the chat, I cannot. Or come on video and like verbally tell me what question you'd like me to answer. So we have any advice for after graduation? What are you working on right now? How do you make really big projects? How do you keep up with technology? Do you like video games? And do you have time for personal projects? So that's kind of a starter set. So what should we start with first?
Okay, so far we have a few votes for the how do you make really big projects?
Okay, let's go for it. All right, how do you make really big projects? So I'm going to share a project that probably the biggest one that I worked on. It's called Vision 2020. Hopefully that works. Are you seeing the screen with yellow and green?
Yes,
Rune?
yes.
Yeah. All right. So Seat at the Table was an exhibition that my studio created back in 2020. It was in celebration of the 100 years of the women's right to vote in the United States. If you can like remember even 3 years ago before the pandemic, what life was like. This was very early on when we were like engaged in this project. I think our studio was only a year old. And the client was Drexel University. They were a little nonprofit within them, which was really focused on women's leadership and how to advocate for more women in government and forms of leadership. And so they engaged us to design something, anything to celebrate the centennial of the women's right to vote. And so, you know, in starting a new studio, we were kind of also figuring out what our process was going to be and how we were going to tackle this, because there was really no brief. There was kind of a space in mind, but they didn't really know what they wanted to do. And so this kind of was a nice little way for us to figure out how we were going to work moving forward as a studio. So the first thing that we did was kind of just go into discovery and figure out what kind of strategy and content the client even had. And so we had a couple of workshops just talking through the types of stories that they were going to tell, had them charrette actual ideas together, think about the space and different ways to think about interaction, and just brainstorm together with their professors, with doctors, with educators, kind of all the people in the room. And really thinking about like the overarching visitor journey of what it's like to go through an experience and the types of things they would encounter and how we would tell those stories across time. Then we went into just concept design, where we're just coming up with any idea, any crazy idea that we could think of, and really like rapid fire, just generating and iterating as much as possible. And, you know, it's pretty low fidelity. This was the actual space we were given. It's called the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia, and it's massive. There's like 3-4 levels and like skylights and sunshine. And then it's used for like symphony, orchestra performances and Broadway shows. It's like a multifunctional space, and like that bottom plaza was essentially what we're given, but it was quite huge. So we ended up trying to propose something that would fill that space. This is a rendering of what we ultimately created, but just how do we use such a huge space and create something that wouldn't just disappear in such a vast cavern? But we started really with some rough ideas of what we could do. So even thinking about environmental graphics, you know, what if we were to show all the years of, you know, each state ratifying the 19th Amendment and creating some kind of data visualization with that and with banners. We're thinking about women's clothing and how women's clothing has changed over time, and if that could be used as a physical installation with media kind of wrapped around it. We were really thinking about like large interactive cones that would essentially amplify a person's voice through as you spoke. Maybe there's some kind of like speech recognition as you speak, and like the words are actually flowing out. So kind of playing with that idea of symbolism, of making your voice heard. Bikes are really important for women's suffrage and giving women the mobility to go and work and to vote. And so we were like, what if there's some kind of biking experience that as you pedal, you literally pedal through time? And then we again wanted to work with the space. So how can we use that vertical space to also create kind of symbolic gestures, such as shattering like a glass ceiling? What if there's something above you? What if there's something as you walk up the stairs to the different tiers that's really about, you know, moving up and progressing as people? So we had like lots of crazy ideas. Eventually, you know, we landed in, I think it was 2016, and like Hillary Clinton lost the election, if you remember, and like we literally had our final review that day, and everyone in the room was like ready to like say, yes, we finally had our first woman president, and we didn't. And it really recontextualized what this exhibit was for. It was, for us, it was really like, wow, we have not come as far as we thought. And so we were like, what if that became actually the theme for this exhibit? What if we really showed where is the state of women today? And like, how far have we really come, and how far do we have to go? And so we kind of came up with this idea of creating human scaled infographics. So what if we took like these boring statistics that you read every day and actually make them physical and make them to a scale of a person so that you really can sit in it? So we were thinking about the metaphor of a seat at the table. and that you can actually sit in these statistics and understand what one seat in Congress would feel like, 25% of women, in the House of Representatives, for instance. What does that really feel like? And so this is kind of where we landed as a concept, and then moved it into design development, where we really started to prototype and figure out what the layout of that space is. So we took the floor plan, if you see this grid, as our unit of scale, and kind of extruded this infographic furniture into that space. So that's kind of the idea, the big idea. So, we go from like super lo-fi hand sketches all the way into kind of more mid-fidelity, really thinking about what the content is, what the stories of each one of these graphics are. So you're seeing like, maybe it's about money. How much money does an Asian American woman make to like a white man? What's the representation of women at CEO tables, right, in government? So we're just trying to take these collective categories and themes and try to figure out what's the best kind of seat to create for each one. I'm not a furniture designer, but we had this idea, and so we're like, well, let's work with a furniture designer. So we worked with Dan Bethmajan, who's an amazing industrial designer, to help us prototype, build, and sketch the drawings for each one of these furniture pieces and build this stuff into model. And so this is kind of to scale the models very early on in design development. It's also important for us when we build stuff to prototype. So we're oftentimes taping things out to get a sense of how big this thing will be. We're using hot glue and foam core. I think this is a foam core seat to scale, and seeing, can someone sit on it? Is it going to fall over? How does it actually arrange in the space? So we're oftentimes prototyping as we go. Even like prototyping with print, like we also wanted this exhibit to be completely removable, since they have events coming through all the time. So each piece actually had to be moved out and be able to be moved back in. But while it's removed, we wanted to have kind of floor graphics representing each one of these pieces. So we had floor vinyl also covering the floors, and just making sure the color contrast, the scale, and the size were legible from far away. So we're printing and testing in the space in different lighting conditions. There were some interactive, what we call protest posters, where we can actually see the voices of the different pioneers, and creating some motion graphics around each one of their kind of key quotes. We did get bikes in, which was a really exciting thing. And we really thought about the idea of voter turnout, that we're kind of representing over time how many women have voted from the past 100 years, and just trying to call people to vote. So going from design development, we moved into production and working with a fabricator to actually build each one of these pieces. We're like actually working with them to build construction documents. We hired a software developer to help to build the interactive monitors, and we're overseeing kind of production of all the pieces. So here, the fabricator is creating like one of the infographic CEO tables. To the left is like the podium for the president, like how many women have been president, which is 0. So actually fabricating each one of these pieces and then installing it, where we're actually physically on site, making sure everything is like perfect to what we imagine and to spec, and being there for launch. So I'm just gonna play the final thing just so you can see what the final outcome was. So it's here in Philly at the Kimmel Center again. And this is kind of the overview of the larger space with people in it. And so again, celebrating the 19th Amendment and the centennial. You can go up to any chair. People were eating lunch here, school groups were coming through, and kind of have that pie chart CEO roundtable, benches to represent, this is representing the dollar, so, and then also with government. So each one of these pieces, again, representing different demographics, and even the cafe tables that we created were little pie charts of different industries, and what percentage of women were in those industries at these cafe tables. So using everything we could think of, any kind of seating structure and table structure to kind of represent these different topics. And so that's kind of one of the biggest projects we undertook. Again, we started in 2014, we opened it in 2016. So it took 4 years to get to this place. Every single time we finished up one deliverable, we thought, oh, well, maybe we'll never be able to keep going because maybe they have to fundraise again. But somehow we built it, and then it opened. It actually officially opened in 2020, and then a month later, COVID hit, and so everything closed. Amazingly, it was extended for a couple more years, but it's probably one of the biggest, hairiest, confusing projects that we had worked on, but also one of the most satisfying. I'm going to go back to our other slide. So going back to the questions, hopefully I answered that. Sometimes taking on those really big projects takes a long time and a team of people. So that's what that one's about. What should we go with next?
Hi, do you have any
Hi.
advice for after graduation?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I know some of you might be in that frame
Thank
of
you.
mind. Yeah. Okay. In order to answer that question, I kind of need to walk you through what I did after graduation. So let me just give you a little rundown of like my trajectory. So I graduated in 2005 from UCLA. I was pre-med. I studied psychology, so I had a science background, and I never taken any kind of art or design class when I graduated, but I just got out of there as soon as I could, essentially. I didn't really enjoy my experience in the sciences. I had always wanted to take a design class, but just never had gotten a chance. And so graduating with my undergrad in psychology was just like, great, I learned about human behavior. I have no idea, I don't want to be a therapist, but at least I have that background, right? It was 4 years of just kind of searching and trying to find what it was that I wanted to do. But it was really until after I graduated that I was like, okay, now I know that I don't want to do psychology and I don't want to be a doctor. So what else can I do? So the first job I got was actually as a studio manager for an architecture studio. They just opened a new office in Los Angeles and they need someone to like make the coffee and buy pens and answer the phones. And so I was like, great. It's design adjacent, but it's administrative. So I can go and do that. I can answer phones. So I went to this company and discovered this whole world of design and working with designers and architects and understanding how you think about land and a master plan. They had me coloring in trees for their like deliverables with markers late at night and teaching me how to make proposals in InDesign. And so I kind of slowly became a graphic designer in-house, though unofficially, but it really sparked my love for design. And I was like, I want to be a designer. How do I become a designer? I took classes at night, design classes at night at Arts Center, at community colleges, and built a portfolio so that I could apply to graphic design programs. And so that's what I did next after 3 years. I got into RISD for graphic design because I was like, I'm going to be a graphic designer. And then when I was actually at RISD, I decided that I really just want to make videos. So for my thesis, I ended up just like really just making as many videos as I could. This is before like Instagram and TikTok, like the phone had just come out, like the iPhone had just come out 2 years. The video camera was really crappy. So I bought like a camcorder and just made videos and just experimented with like cool stuff. And that really kind of broadened my definition of graphic design into more media design. I got an internship at local projects editing videos. And then they found out that I was actually a pretty good designer, decided to hire me as one of their graphic designers. And it was there that I started to understand interactive media and interaction design. I never designed for any kind of like interactive thing, but some of the principles in like video that I learned kind of applied, and graphic design also applied. And so I just kind of cut my teeth there learning about UI and UX before it was really a formal thing. This is a project I worked on at the Cleveland Museum of Art, designing with a Kinect camera and matching art to your body poses, right? All this was just learned at the job. There was no course for me to take to learn this stuff. It was a lot of just trial, error, testing, and seeing it being used by people. So that's kind of like where I cut my teeth learning about interactive media. I did a lot of design for clients there, but then I was like, how do you even start? Like, where do clients even come up with a brief? Before they even have an RFP, where does that even begin? And so there's all this like decision making in the upper echelons of business. And I was like, I want to learn about that. So then I went to SYPartners, where I was like learning all about business strategy. So it's consulting. I was like, I'm going to learn about consulting. I'm going to work with CEOs, designing their businesses. I'm going to make lots of PowerPoint presentations, putting out strategy. I'm not going to design anything that exists in the world, but I just want to know what that upstream thinking is, So that's kind of what I did for a couple of years. And after I kind of went to SYPartners, I also started to teach. I was like, I really loved teaching. It also, I don't recommend bleaching your hair. It's a terrible picture. I look crazy. But teaching to me was also part of my practice because I wanted to give back in some way to kind of the design education that I received. So I started teaching at SVA, teaching some typography classes. This is one of my classes I teach about space. And then I decided down the road to also start teaching at Parsons. I taught thesis and then came on board full-time during the pandemic and started directing the MPS program. So now I'm kind of directing and learning how to direct lots of teachers and lots of classes and work with students in that grad program. So kind of rounding out kind of what I'm learning in the education space. And then, at the same time, I have my practice. So like I said before, running a business is its own project. The biggest project I'll probably ever have is, designing a studio essentially. And what is it that you want to make? Who do you want to work with? How do you bring in money? Every year we start at zero. And how do you bring in income, right? How do you do taxes? All of these things are like super mundane for a designer. But at this point in my career, I was like, I kind of want to just do it. I want to be a boss. I want to figure out how you build your own business. And so that was kind of the past 9 years of what I've been doing with our studio. And then I also have kids. I have my dog kid. I have my real kid. And now I'm a parent. And like, that's also part of kind of what's informing my life and like informing what it is that my practice is. And so what I would say in total for the advice that I could give to anyone graduating is to steal everything. So as you go through each one of these jobs, try to take as much knowledge, skills, connections, relationships, all of it counts. All of it is your bag of tricks that you're going to take into your career. And you're going to just follow your curiosity based on what you're not learning or what you want to learn next, right? So as you go, before you leave a place, like take it all. That's my best advice. Because once you leave there, you may never get to go back, if that makes sense. Does that answer the question, Erin?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Oops, I didn't mean to stop sharing. Here, let me go back to that. Let's go back to our questions again. All right. Next question. What do folks want to hear next?
How do you keep up with technology would be great. We just live in a world where everything's constantly changing.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Just as a designer, there are so many tools you like need to get through. So yeah, that would be really interesting.
Sure. Yeah. Because we're an experience design studio, and I say we're medium agnostic, meaning we're not like a web shop that if you come to us, you're going to get a website. A lot of what we do is really thinking about the story and then figuring what's the best medium to tell that story. What's the most compelling experience that will express that story? So, one of our more recent projects was at the Cleveland Museum of Art. They were doing an exhibition on Cambodian sculpture. And, this is in the middle of Cleveland, Ohio. A lot of folks don't have much familiarity with Southeastern art, Southeast Asian art. And so this was a chance to really create like a show around this one sculpture that you're seeing in this poster on the left about Krishna, this deity, this boy deity that saved his people from like raising a mountain under a flood. How do you tell that story? It's a complex story. It also started to tap into the big debate with museums right now about provenance and like where these artifacts come from, who actually owns them. This piece to the left was owned by the Cleveland Museum of Art. The other pieces are not. And then how do you start to work with other institutions to like figure out what the whole story of this collection of sculptures are? So we were tasked to tell this really complex story. This sculpture like moved from France to Cambodia, colonialism, wars. I mean, it's been traveling a lot. And so we were trying to figure out how do you best tell the story of a sculpture? How do you tell the story of this Southeast Asian like religion as well? So we started, like I said, we do strategy, we work on a workshop and facilitate, the conversation about what are the goals of the project? What are the media design principles that we need to anchor these stories around? And we started off with some really lo-fi sketching. This is my hand sketching of like what we could create. We were interested in like giving people, like dropping people into what it feels like to be in Cambodia. So dropping them into a boat, going through canals, getting to this temple where this original sculpture was. We were also like had to tell a very complex linear story. So we were also like, well, maybe some kind of map or like some kind of visualization of that timeline would be really helpful. And then a lot of the pieces actually couldn't be moved because they were so big. So how do we represent some of these sculptures digitally in like full scale? So we're like, oh, maybe we do something with projection that's like full scale human size, right? And then the last piece, we're like, well, what if, you know, how do you tell a really complex story and really take people along? Like you could certainly write it all out, but you know, we've all read really long wall labels and never processed it. Well, how can you tell that story in a more compelling way? And so we kind of landed on the idea of using mixed reality to tell the story of these sculptures. We partnered with Case Western University, who's developing HoloLens technology for their medical school. So they were working on like actual physical bodies and anatomy classes with the HoloLens using like these headsets called HoloLens that you put on and actually see holograms. So we worked with them like, well, if you can do it with human bodies, you can do it with sculpture. So we're like, how do you start to use some of these 3D models that were captured of these sculptures and tell that story? Essentially like a piecing the puzzle story of like how all these pieces came together. We also went to Cambodia on a film shoot and actually went to the Temple Mount and scanned the actual space inside so that we could recreate the cave in HoloLens. You could literally be in the hologram of the cave. This is our DP on site using drone footage. We were shooting like 3-point cameras to like get that sense of immersion in the canals. And then also taking 3D photogrammetry models of each one of the sculptures that could not come to Cleveland. And again, prototyping was really important. So we were trying to see these things in full scale. To the left, we kind of created this panoramic motion graphic piece with these like lined up screens. This is it on the ground, but we're just trying to get a sense of scale of what a person could see across this linear panoramic video. And then also a full scale, like maybe 2 or 3 of the sculptures at full scale in this projection piece, and how big are they and how's like the quality of the projector. We're all testing these things as we develop it. And so this is kind of shots of the final piece from the river. Again, you're just kind of fully immersed in both video and audio in that soundscape. This was kind of what I call the pantheon of the 8 gods that were there on the Temple Mount, and you kind of can just encounter each one of them as you like stepped onto each one of these little explore kind of floor markers. The animation actually plays and gives you more detail about each one of these pieces. And then also the motion graphics piece. The HoloLens piece was like the gnarliest because no one had really figured out how to design UI for the HoloLens well. We were going room to room. So there's about 6 rooms that you literally had to walk to and stop at each station to learn about each piece of the story. And so a lot of this was like building a little bit, testing it, building a little bit, trying to fix the color so it's actually like legible. Where does text go in mixed reality? Is it stuck in place? Oh no, that makes you nauseous. So it's a lot of like testing and retesting and trying new things to try to figure out how do you build for this. And again, with partners who know how to build this stuff rapidly, it was really the only way we could build with new technology. So partnerships are super helpful. We don't claim to be a HoloLens expert or a cinematographer or someone who can fly drones, but we work with really smart and capable people to do that stuff with. So that was kind of the final 4 pieces that we created. And it was probably one of the biggest shows that they've ever had, like selling out in terms of the exhibition. But let me just quickly play you the final project.
The sound of my flute will guide you between 5 different stations. Here in southern Cambodia, a small sacred mountain with 2 peaks rises out of the floodplains. This is how they think it used to be 1500 years ago. My sculpture, dark and shining once again.
The 8 great gods of Pramda, created 15 centuries ago, are among the first manifestations of Cambodian artistic and devotional genius in the permanent medium of stone.
Okay, so hopefully that answers the technology questions. Just that, I think it is at the end of the day about stories. If you can tell the right story, like we're not about just cool tech or like just putting the newest gadget out there, but it's like what will actually serve the story. And then working with really talented and smart people to kind of build that. It's not something that you need to know how to do everything, but you kind of need to know what's appropriate for what story. Does that help, Shivi?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was really interesting to like not be stuck with a phone or like laptop medium for a bit, but also realize that there's a lot of other technology you could work with I mean, at the end, we as designers are trying to create an experience, like you said. So it's a lot about collaboration also.
Yeah,
Super
there are many
interesting.
ways, that technology can come into it. And there's always new stuff. I mean, I'm just like waiting for someone to ask me to do something with AI and ChatGPT. But it's like, again, it's like everything's a new shiny toy. Everything's kind of hacked anyway. So, and I think this is what I learned at local projects is like, you kind of just invent it and someone will know how to build it. So that's what I learned. Like, you just you'll figure it out. This is probably what I would say. Next question. Anyone want to throw out another one they want to learn about?
Hey, Lynn, I actually have a question that isn't on your list, but based off of what you've been talking about. So with these big projects, how do you recommend working with these groups of people that are outside of your studio itself and bringing them on and trusting them, or even finding the right people in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you like how important is trust is in the world. Like you're like leading a team and you're like putting like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on these projects. And you need to like find trustworthy partners to, who will do the work, but also not bail on you. And we did have a project that the company we were working with closed, like shuttered in the middle of production, and we had to like scramble and find somebody. I mean, for us, it really is, hey, we like you. Do you know somebody who has done this before? Like our cinematographer in Cambodia, it was literally through like a connection we had in local projects. It's like, do you know a cinematographer that can do photogrammetry? The most obscure and specific question. And he's like, yeah, I know this one guy. He used to make video games. He worked on Chernobyl. Like, I'm like, cool. So we like reached out to him. His name's Constantine. And like, we're like, all right, Constantine, you're our guy because Ariel recommended you. So we're going with it. So a lot of it is just vetting by personal like recommendation. Since we trust Ariel, that's how we find the people. Same thing with our software developers. Hey, like, do you know somebody that can design like image recognition in AR? And there's usually some developer who that's their specialty. And so, for us, again, we're a 2-person studio. We don't have any developers. Like for us, every project requires a different skill. So we're always constantly trying to fill up our coffers of like, who do we know? Who's really good at what they do? And just literally asking, like it's all relationships and it's just all trust. Not much more of a science than that. And then just hoping they don't bail on us. That's it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting to me, the dynamic of hiring these people when you don't really even know how to work the technologies or program, and just kind of letting them do their thing, but I guess directing them and guiding them. I mean, I guess that's a huge part of being a designer, is just directing and delegating. But it's so weird to me thinking of like not really having the control of the technology and knowing how to use it fully.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the foundational education you're getting at Parsons with the core interaction, typography and interaction series, like you're getting an understanding of how software is built. You're never going to be a computer scientist, or maybe some of you are, you're going to go into engineering, but I have enough knowledge of what, physical computing can do, what an Arduino can do, how HTML, CSS, JavaScript works from my grad education like 12 years ago, that it still applies. So, you know, when I talk to developers, I'm also challenging them, like when they're creating things, I'm like, does that have to be like a fixed position? Can it be responsive, right? Like, can we make it flexible? Like, I'm also understanding enough that I can talk to them and I won't look like a complete ignorant person in front of them. And so I have enough knowledge of what is possible. So it's also important for you to do well in understanding code, in understanding how a CMS is built, how do APIs work, right? Like those are all important things so that you're not first like bamboozled by a software developer, but also that you can understand how to like what's possible and what could you design with it. So it's a little bit of both. Know enough, that's what I would say. Good question though. I'll go back to this, or we could throw another question. Anyone want to ask one?
Hi, Lynn. I just wanted to ask, like, in your practice, like, what kind of clients are you like focusing on, like, or like, do you have like what do you have like a vision for that or something?
Ina, that is such a good question. What I wish I had a master plan for. No. When you're running your own business, I mean, some people
Yeah.
might be really good about having like a business plan, you know, but like we're like literally living off of this income. It's not like we're trust fund babies or anything. So like we're literally trying to make income every year for the two of us. And we're just very
Right.
candid with you. And so we'll take whatever. When we first started, we were designing PowerPoint templates for like startups, you know, like literally like 4 or 5 templates. Like that's what we did because we were graphic designers. So like, yeah, we could design a logo. Sure, we could do this printed thing. And it was for the first 3 years, just like these odd jobs that we would just take because we had to make income, right? But it's only now, like 9 years later, we're getting like these bigger, complex, meatier projects because people now recommend us and people now trust us, right? Kind of going back to that trust thing. For us, like we never go after any cold projects where it's like an RFP. One day you'll encounter one of these, it's a request for proposal where this big company will put out a request for you to like, you know, pitch your ideas. We don't have time or money to do that. So we only go through kind of word of mouth. And so it's kind of like whoever our past clients or partners have worked with, they're like, oh, you have to talk to Katie and Lynn. And let's be honest, we're a 2-person studio. We don't look like this big company with 40 engineers, you know, like we don't, that's kind of the thing we're always up against. It's like we're this small shop. We're also women, we're also minorities. Like how can we compete? And to us, it's really like, have people worked with us before? Do they know us and what we can do? Do they believe that we can pull off big, hairy, complex projects? And like, that's how we've found the work that we've gotten ourselves into. So no, there's no master plans, but it is like, okay, we're just kind of following the trail of like what comes through our door and what people recommend us for has probably been like the way we've found the most interesting projects for us. So.
Oh, thank you. It's really impressive to see like the studio work. It's really cool.
Thank you. Thank you. And, you know, maybe other people working in business have a much more strategic plan, but I don't know. I've just given up on like trying to plan it out. We just kind of roll with it. There's a little bit of improv all the time.
Thank you. That's good to know. Yeah.
Going back to this. I'll look in the chat. Do you have time for personal projects? Thanks, Sushanto. I'll go there. You know, one would say that if you run your own studio, all of it's kind of your personal project, but there's things that I just am like craving to do, or just like, it's just, I have to do it, you know, kind of moment where I'm like, I need to make something. So one of these moments was when, if you remember this in like 2020, this happened. And I will admit I was a bit shocked, as a big like believer that Hillary Clinton was gonna win. And I was pretty horrified that he had won, to be completely transparent. I was so horrified and mad, I decided to get into activism. And I was like, I'm going to the Women's March. I'm so freaking mad, I'm gonna go, right? And if everyone remembers, back in it was the 2016 election. Back in 2017, there was a women's march in DC and around the world where all the women, the very angry women, wore like pink pussy hats and like marched on Washington, DC after the inauguration. And I was like, I need to like just design stuff because I don't know how else to express my anger. And so I was like, I'm gonna go to this protest march. I need a poster. I'm gonna make some posters. So for like 2 weeks, I just like turned out a poster a day. I was like, I need a poster. Maybe other people need a poster. I'm just gonna like make stuff. And so I just made a bunch of posters, super lo-fi. Like within like 2 weeks, I had like all these posters, and I'm like, and I'm gonna put it online. So I just like built a website off of my own website. I just put it online, put it on Facebook. I was like, go download posters if you need a poster, right? And that was just like my personal vendetta. And then, you know, I went to the march and like made some posters. And what was really cool was actually seeing people use the posters. Like I saw the signs everywhere. It was super satisfying to be in this crowd of hundreds of thousands of women, like just trying to demonstrate our rage and just express what we were trying to express through these posters. And, you know, just seeing these posters also show up in like social media, people were just sending me like screenshots of like social media throughout the march of like all these posters showing up around the world. And like, I will say that's probably one of the most gratifying moments. Like I was like, okay, design at its most fundamental, like it's there to communicate. And if we can offer that as a tool for people in a very lo-fi, rapid response way, like it could be very powerful. And like to me, like ultimately there's like 9,000 signs downloaded that week, and like 70,000 people came to this website. Like it's just like it's like basic graphic design, like the most basic of just voicing, putting a voice to people, right? Like giving them a voice essentially. So that to me was like one of my personal projects that I was really excited for. And like, it didn't take long. It took like 2 weeks to make this, right? And so if there's something that really is just like something you must make, just follow that passion and like go for it. I will say like with the studio work and now also teaching, I see all of it now as kind of my practice, but there are moments where there's no client and I just really want to make something. And that's kind of when I can carve out the time, which is not much. You know, I don't really devote months and months to personal projects, but when I can do something quickly and respond in a way that's true to me, then yeah, I will totally make space for it. Does that help, Shashanto?
Yes, totally. Love how bold that was.
Thanks. I was really angry, as you might have seen from some of the language. Anger is a good fuel, I have to say, for making.
Yeah.
Any other questions you want to dive into in our last 10 minutes together? Amazingly, we've already talked for like almost an hour.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Could you talk a little bit about what are you working on right now, or not a little bit?
Yeah, just talk about it. Yeah, I can do it quickly. So right now, our studio is working with the Museum of the City of New York. They're celebrating their 100-year anniversary as a museum. If you've ever been there, it's 105th Street, like Upper East Side, past the Guggenheim, really high up there. So we're installing an exhibition for them in May. So while you're all doing your capstone and thesis, I'm like trying to install this exhibit. They are a museum that represents the city. So the history of the city, the stories of the city. They have amazing interactive exhibits downstairs done by local projects. I recommend you just check it out anyway. But we were given the entire second floor to imagine what 100 years of New York has been. Like, awesome topic, so much content. We were hired on with Studio Joseph, an architecture studio, to really think about the media pieces and how we can tell the story. And like we do, we started with our workshops and just understanding what could be the different media that could be in this space, and started with our sketching of like, okay, what if we did something with projecting like actual physical spaces? What if it was like all the TV shows that, you know, have represented New York in movies? Maybe it has to do with sound, the soundscapes of the streets, and how do we kind of, or what if it's like this billboard experience in Times Square, really lo-fi, right? Like, just what could it be? You know, we look at these spaces first and just try to understand the constraints and opportunities in them. So this hallway that's in that center gallery is literally a city block long. So we're like, okay, what if this is about the streets? What if it's literally about you walking through a city street, right? And the different ideas that might pop up in your head about what New York represents. So we're like, okay, maybe we have these illuminated balloons as like almost like a I don't know, idea cloud of what New York could be. Maybe it's just about the artists and the people like who have made things about New York, and it's like projected overhead. I mean, there's like crazy ideas we had. We're like, what if you can go into the brain of one of the New Yorkers and see into their minds? Kind of kitschy now, right? Like, but we're just like not really filtering. We're just trying to come up with, okay, what are the wild and crazy things it could do? Or even like keep it analog. What if it's like a card sort of like things that you really love about New York and things that you really hate about New York? What if it's some kind of pinup board? You know, there's so much work that's been around New York, including poetry and literature. Like, what if like we had some kind of motion graphics piece that really revolved around New York and just bringing up different lyrics around that idea of New York? So that's kind of one of the pieces we're working on. I see Chris Kim is on this call. He's working on this with us too right now and helping us with some of the animation on this piece, but essentially having the word New York anchored as physical signage and then rotating poetry, music, lyrics, literature quotes around the word New York as you go through the space. That's actually the opening of the show. It's this motion graphics title of the show. Then we're like, okay, audio is really a really immersive sense. And so we're like, being anyone who has been in New York knows how noisy it is and how cacophonous this place is. So what if we started to bring in this kind of audio experience into this? This is a very early sketch. Like maybe as you walk around a space, you start to hear these different isolated audio moments of New York, and collectively they create this cacophony of sound. And so that kind of got us to thinking about, well, there's just so much music in New York about different boroughs. What if there's some kind of visualization with audio with the map of New York and like the songs that have come from there? It's like a jukebox. So one of the pieces we're building right now is this audio jukebox that as you step into each borough, it actually keys on different songs. So you, for instance, if you were to step into Manhattan, you would start to hear this like playlist of Manhattan songs. You stepped into Bronx, and you start to hear Bronx songs. So that's also another experience of just bringing that story of music into this space in a more mapped way. And finally, so this is the prototype that we're building right now. It's going to install in May, but like this is like a very rough prototype. As you step into each borough, like you actually hear the music of each one of the spaces. So different kind of interaction using what's above is like just a motion sensor, so it knows that you're standing there. There's a gobo light hooked up to that, so that's being activated, and then it's essentially playing a playlist of music. And then another portion of the exhibit is books. And so we were like, how do you activate books in a really interesting way? Books about New York. So we're like, okay, what if the books itself were objects that could be, you know, the kind of target or the trigger objects? So we're like, okay, what if you have a dock and you could dock a book and then go into that book and like see what the interior spaces of some of these children's books and some of the literature that's been written about New York. And so what if that becomes like this projected video experience above you? So we're doing stuff with children's books and also TV shows, so that, you know, as you trigger these books and content, it actually plays clips from that. So here's like a prototype we built. On the table are like DVD boxes, like TV scripts, some books,
script,
and then if you like pick one up and dock it, we're just using RFID like readers, which is like what you use in like, you know, your keychain. It actually plays a video. So just giving another way in that's not a touch screen, giving this physical, tangible book to then trigger interactive content in a very simple lo-fi technology way was kind of what we're building for May.
We return to the track state.
So you can hear my voiceover as we're documenting that. So that's what I'm working on now. We're like literally in production. I'm like cutting like 50 music videos for the song piece. Chris Kim is working on the motion piece right now, and like my partner Katie is cutting all the videos for the book. So like it's literally just the three of us making all that content. We have like one team of developers that we're building all of that with. So it's not very big. I think I also learned from my time at local projects that it doesn't take many people to do complex stuff. You just need the right people. So even at local projects, we were like 3 people trying to build an entire museum experience. Like it's actually you don't need a big team at the end of the day. You just have to be really like experts at it. So if you see me going crazy in April, I apologize. I'm probably dealing with the museum. So that's what I'm up to. And I know we have a couple minutes left, but I appreciate that you went with this format. Again, I just like talking to you all. So thank you for your questions. Is there any other question I can answer in the last 2 minutes? All right, Rune, do you want to close us out?
Sure. I mean, this is amazing. Thank you so much, Lynn, for your time, sharing your projects, and also for the thoughtful questions and answers. I just really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you. And for everyone, again, this lecture and all of our past lectures can be found from our YouTube channel, which I am putting the link in the chat with a little subscription pop-up. So please do subscribe, visit, browse, and that's it for today's lecture. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Lynn, for leading the conversation today, and see you everyone in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Have a good weekend.